Did you send me the?
It should already be up.
You send me the slide or what is it?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it should be
oh, yeah,
open
you
already.
put them on
Yeah,
there.
right there.
Because you put in the.
Trello.
Good.
Hi, my name is Brian Fu, and I'm going to be talking about a more personal project. So I'm actually a data visualization artist at the American Museum of Natural History. This has nothing to do with that. But it is a little more related to some projects, creative projects that I've been doing on the side around different ways of turning different data sets into music. So this project actually started back when I used to work at the New York Public Library. This is kind of an intersection between what I did at the library, which was at one time work with transcripts of oral histories, and intersection of that, and then my interest in music on the side. So one of the things that I got kind of consumed with as I was transcribing the different oral histories is what kind of gets lost from that process of going from spoken word to text. So this is a quote by Steve Reich, an American composer, who is a big inspiration for me as somebody who's both a programmer and somebody who composes music, because he uses a lot of process-based compositional methods. So a lot of his early music was very much inspired by spoken word, and actually started. It started when he was trying to turn a poem by William Carlos Williams into music, and he found that the meaning was so tied to kind of what he calls a speech quality, which is the rhythm and dynamics and timbre of how somebody speaks, that when he tried to translate it into kind of fixed meter music, it kind of destroyed the meaning of it. So I did have some audio, but I guess I didn't set up the permissions right. Sorry. So I started. I started with a process of trying to convert spoken word into sheet music. So the idea is that kind of align the text and kind of think of it as lyrics along sheet music that has notes that would kind of give more of an idea of kind of the rhythm and the cadence and kind of the subtle pauses and the ums, the ahs, kind of the seeing kind of how something might speed up or slow down. And I thought it would be appropriate to kind of start with a performance of a poem, because I think poem has an interesting quality of making kind of playful use of language, where how you perform it kind of changes the meaning of it. So I started with this performance by Maya Angelou of one of her no sound.
The lie. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just 'cause I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like suns and like moons, with the certainty of tides.
So you kind of get a sense of, if you watch the whole thing, she's a very playful performer, and obviously, this is her poem, and I thought it'd be interesting to somehow translate this performance, because obviously, you could look up the poem itself and look at the text, but is there a way to represent a performance of that poem in some way? So I'm going to kind of walk through a little more technical point of view of my process of turning kind of this performance into sheet music. and I have all the code listed there, so it's kind of a mess of scripts, but I try to document it pretty well, and it uses from kind of start to finish like open source tools, but it's kind of a hodgepodge of different things. So yeah, the first thing that I did was kind of align the audio and the transcript. So I used a tool called Gentle, which is powered by Kaldi, and it actually worked surprisingly. It worked really well, like out of the box. So it kind of translates. It kind of gives me down to the phoneme where the text aligns with the audio. So this is the first line, kind of a visualization of that. So the second step, I used Prot, which is kind of it's kind of a open source tool for kind of phonetic analysis of speech. So it does a lot of things. In particular, I used it to extract pitch from the audio, as well as intensity and what they call voice pulses. So it's kind of like syllables. So this took a little bit of tweaking to her particular kind of pitch range of her voice, but you can kind of just see a visual. So this is kind of the spectrogram of the audio, and then what Prot kind of gave me in terms of what it thought the best pitch was. So I guess the tricky, it started to get a little tricky because, I had to start to think about, okay, now I have all this pitch data, how do I translate that into, individual notes? So, there's kind of simple cases like this where it's kind of a very, short single syllable word, where I could kind of simply, and there's not a lot of pitch variation, so I could simply just kind of choose, the part of that set of pitches that has like the highest intensity, probably closer to the beginning of the word. But then there's kind of a little more complicated cases where, I guess in musical terms, it's kind of you use kind of a slur. So you kind of go from like, high pitch to a low pitch, or if there's many syllables, kind of go up and down or something like that. So I had to kind of do like a best, kind of like a best guess of these types of things. So I was kind of looking for the peaks of kind of the audio's intensity, and then trying to guess, I guess like the different peaks and valleys that would be kind of the start and end of a particular slur. So the next step I thought would be a little complicated, but there is a really cool program called LilyPond, which is also open source, and it basically allows you to input kind of musical notes in like some syntax that they have. So I was able to do this programmatically, so I was very easily able to kind of output the result. But obviously, this kind of gets to kind of Steve Reich's point, is that people don't speak in neat fixed kind of meters or quarter notes or eighth notes or half notes. So, there's kind of this balance between aesthetics and kind of accuracy. This is kind of the most accurate in the sense that there's probably like 1 30-second notes, and I think to be most accurate, it had to be like 1 over 32 or 1 over 64, eighth notes. So it kind of gets like really messy like this. So one thing I did is that you could kind of just increase the beats per minute of the song, and that would immediately like make a quarter note go from a quarter second to a half second. You could also kind of just define a minimum of like have the smallest note be a 1/16th note, for example, and that kind of makes a little better for legibility purposes. So yeah, this is kind of the final result.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll arise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom?
So I mean, you kind of see it's pretty accurate, but like it would require a lot of work to make it a little better. I actually converted it into MIDI as well, and I did not make these videos public, unfortunately. But I'll share the slides as well. But so there's other things that I would want to have done with this. Obviously, there's kind of like a rabbit hole of things that you can do in terms of like doing like crescendos or kind of like articulations like staccato, because people speak in different rhythms and patterns. Obviously, chords would have make it a little more accurate in terms of kind of the timbre of somebody's speech. There's obviously challenges to do this at scale. This is like a one-off project, so it's very finely tuned to Maya Angelou's voice. But all the scripts and stuff are available online. I mention it as being like possibly useful for certain things, but this is mostly for my own creative needs. I think for me, I think it's interesting as like somebody who would compose music. You could kind of extract melodies from speech and kind of have that as a basis of like music creation, for example. Especially for me, somebody who doesn't really have like a formal music background. And there's like I don't know if you're familiar with like DJ Spooky, but he's like a hip hop philosopher type of thing, and he kind of talks about how you could use catchy beats and loops to kind of push different ideas, into culture. And I think that would be an interesting kind of use case to kind of combine, this practice of like a modern DJ with like oral histories or kind of sound archives. So yeah, that's about it. And again, everything is open source, and you can check it out. Questions? Yeah.
I have a question about the process of fine-tuning for Maya Angelou's voice.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So it's a lot of trial and error. I think very, very loosely, it's trying to find the general range in which in this particular performance her voice goes in between. So it's kind of me tweaking variables, running the process again, and just me kind of manually looking at if it did a good job or not. But yeah, that's really not my expertise. So there's probably some kind of pre-processing you could do just to analyze, a particular audio file of somebody speaking. I mean, this room probably knows more than I do in that particular case.